So the ideal American man, the ideal man that I should be, is a gentleman farmer, at least if you're from the American South, which is where I am from. So, for example, the first 5 presidents, 4 of them were from Virginia. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe. All from Virginia, and Virginia is part of the American South. And these men were gentlemen farmers. They were gentlemen, they could read, they could talk, they could do architecture like Thomas Jefferson, but they were also farmers. They worked on their farm. They brought in crops. George Washington actually died because he was getting older and he went out on a cold day to check his land. He came home and he had guests, he had friends, so he didn't go dry off. As a gentleman, he wouldn't make his guests wait. He said, no, let's sit down, let's eat, let's talk, even though I'm freezing from being outside. And the next day, he got sick and he died a few days later. That's not a happy story, but the idea is that an American man, in the South at least, should be a gentleman farmer. He should treat everyone well, and he should take care of his land. And so about 100 years ago, and even more recently than that, there were serious race problems in the United States, typically directed towards black people by white mobs. And they would kill or harm black people without due process, without justice. It was just racial violence, and it was very terrible. The clever thing that this poet does is, instead of just writing, hey, you're bad, which is very easy to push away. Anyone that tells me I'm bad, I can just push them away. But if someone uses what I know to help me understand something, I can't push it away because it's part of me. So what this poet does is he uses this ideal of the gentleman farmer who cares about his land. And instead of saying racism is bad, racial violence is bad, he uses a metaphor of strange fruit. And the fruit is these dead bodies, these people that are being killed and hung from the trees. The poet says, if you are a gentleman farmer, your tree should be growing apples. It should be growing cherries. It should be growing good fruit for our country, for our neighbors. But your trees are growing dead bodies. They have this strange fruit. Why? And the answer is racism. That the poet is saying the racism of the American South has actually poisoned the land. And the land is producing a fruit that is strange, a fruit of dead bodies. Now in this case, the listener can't push that away, because the ideal is that he is a gentleman farmer who loves his land, who nurtures his land. And if his land is producing this strange fruit, then his land is sick. Why is it sick? He has made it sick. He must change. And so that is the power of metaphor, is that you are able to communicate with people through their very selves, the very things they most know and most care about. And in this way, you are able to have the most effect.